Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Inside the Circle, the Marist Circle student newspaper's broadcast on campus and national issues. I'm Melissa Hurlbut, former editor-in-chief of the Marist Circle. With the 2018-2019 academic year wrapping up very shortly, we wanted to take a moment to reflect on the changes Marist has implemented over these last few semesters. Under President David Yellen's strategic plan, the school has intensified its focus on campus diversity and inclusivity. This semester, the college undertook a campus-wide survey that aimed to evaluate the current campus climate as perceived by students and faculty. An executive summary of the findings was released to students today. Also in line with its focus on inclusivity, Marist administration is rethinking the school's traditional priority point system, which is argued to present a disadvantage to minority students. During his last days of student body presidency, Ted Dolce worked with his administration to vote on a priority point resolution. The Student Government Association voted to abolish the current system and replace it with a preference system, similar to the process offered to incoming freshmen for housing selection. The proposal was submitted to President Yellen, who, along with college administrators, will soon make the final decision. This and many more issues will be left in the hands of newly elected Student Body President and Vice President Joe Sarsi and Rhoda Mohammed. Sarah Lynch, Marist Circle Features editor, sat down to talk to Mohammed and Sarsi.
We have here with us tonight recently elected SGA President and Executive Vice President for the 2019-2020 academic year, Joseph Sarchi and Rhoda Mohammed. Their victory was announced April 3rd to the student body. Sarchi and Mohammed won with approximately 40% of the 2,104 votes cast in this year's election. Congratulations to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we delve into the specific plans for your administration, I wanted to know, how did you guys decide that you wanted to run for these positions and what motivated that decision?
Well, I think our story is pretty unique. It's actually quite funny how we met. We actually we knew each other on campus because we were involved in different things, but it kind of just came down to one day in the dining hall where we ended up sitting with each other. There wasn't too many people there, and then we just started talking about some of the problems with the school, and funny enough, we shared a lot of the same concerns, and then I think it just happened organically where we kind of sat down with each other and said, hey, let's do this.
Yeah, I think Joe reached out to me in the dining hall, so we kind of spoke from there, and we share similar goals.
Excellent. So an issue that came up in the debate and that continues to spark discussion and controversy all over campus is priority points. It's what everybody wants to know about, what's happening. And Joe, you pointed out in the debate the flaws with the current system, and you believe that the current system does a disservice to students who have to work to try to pay their tuition. So what's the most recent update with priority points, and how do you hope your administration will play a role in bringing this whole issue to fruition?
Definitely. I think this is one of the major concerns of the student body right now, and this is something that me and Rhoda really want to tackle. The previous priority point system, as you know, you had to participate in different clubs on campus to be able to get priority housing. The way me and Rhoda saw the situation was that this was economically discriminatory against students who work jobs and weren't able to dedicate time on campus to those clubs, so they ultimately were the ones that had to suffer. The way me and Rhoda see it is that we want to lean more towards a preferred system where students would have the option, an opportunity to choose the top 3 choices where they would like to live for the following year, and then there would be a lottery according to that, and we would determine what housing students would get. We feel like this is a more fair system in place. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Rhoda.
I mean, we have done a lot of research with the current administration because I am working with them currently. Just finished working with them, but yeah, we came to the conclusion from gathering a lot of research and survey from the student body. We came that the preferred system was the one that did justice to most of the student body on campus, and I think the priority point system that we currently have is discriminatory to students from lower income society. So definitely the preferred system would be the system to go with.
Definitely.
And another issue that you brought up in the debate were lack of mental health resources on campus. How will you go about combating this specific issue?
I think this is a really interesting question, and I'm glad that you asked it, because a lot of students, even when we were running, came to us and said the mental health services on campus aren't adequate, and if you guys get elected, we definitely want to work with you. So me and Rhoda right now are in this great position where we have an abundance of resources and people who want to get involved to help tackle this issue. But in addition to that, some of the big things that we want to fix are the mental health resources on campus see to about 200 to 300 people a month right now, and the wait time is about 2 weeks to be able to see a professional. We feel like that's unacceptable. We want to be able to expand the space to allow more people to be able to use the services that we have available on campus. We just feel right now that the amount of demand there is on campus, we should be expanding the services available.
Yeah, like I would just add on to like the climate survey result came out today. So one of the things that we need to tackle as like a community is like the mental health issue, and I think it's really important, especially like when we know like one of the questions actually like I think 40% of students, or actually 70% of freshmen, incoming freshmen, want to leave school after like their freshman year, and one of the reasons that like main reasons to why these happen is like the sense of lack of belongingness on campus, being that they don't have the resources on campus. And mental health was like a big issue that we wanted to tackle and still want to tackle. And we have a strong cabinet with us who are like also willing to tackle the same issues, so we can bring these issues like to an end. So we're happy about
definitely
that.
looking forward to seeing the fruits of that. So you've just been elected. There's about a month left of school, give or take. So what will you be doing between now and the beginning of your administration in the fall semester over the summer in preparation for taking over as president and vice president?
I think right now one of the main things that me and Rhoda are trying to focus on is organization. Me and Rhoda both agree that the key to achieving any type of success on campus is being organized. And I think that's the first step, getting all our ducks in the row. Right now, we just are very fortunate that we were able to get our cabinet in place and put really an all-star team together full of people that are just as passionate about changing the campus as we are. And we feel that everything that we want to set out to achieve, we have the right people there right behind us, pushing us forward and holding us accountable. So I think that's really what our main goals are, to make sure that we're organized and we're moving forward effectively.
Yeah, like I think you pretty much said everything, but one thing I would add on to that would be like delegating the work between the cabinet members so that it doesn't only fall on like one person, and like just getting the timeline for the next 9 months so we get the ball rolling as soon as we come in the fall.
You guys will, of course, be taking over for Ted Dolce and Kofa Billups, who are just finishing up their administration right now. So I'm wondering, what's one aspect of their work that they completed this year that you want to develop and build upon, and what's another aspect that you will definitely be changing going forward?
I mean, I had the pleasure to work with both of them, incredible human beings on campus, both great leaders. I think one thing that they have done such a great job is providing resources to students and like just increasing the campus spirit in general. Freshman year coming in, I didn't really want to train SJ or like even know what SJ was. With them, like I was able to both invent my own space on campus and also do the same for students of color and like internationals as well. One thing they could have worked better would be the timeline, I would say, especially like, and I don't think it's their fault. A lot of things that happen last minute. So like, I would say just like working on the timelines, and I think being in their shoes, like I'm being part of their administration, I'm able to see how we can improve ours more. So like, yeah, that's one thing I would say.
Very cool. So some of the questions I guess get asked of President of the United States is, what do you hope to accomplish in your first 100 days? So my question for you two is, first 100 days, the moment you step foot on campus for the fall semester, what are the main issues you'll be tackling right away, and how do you want to really just like hit the ground running?
Well, we're very fortunate that the ideas that we have aren't original. A lot of these ideas that we have were from previous administrations and part of projects that were never finished and completed. So we're coming in with some projects that we want to finish. One of them is early registration for possibly ROTC and students with disabilities. Many of the students on campus don't have the ability to register early, and the way me and Rhoda see it is that we want to give people the opportunity given the hectic schedules and obligations people have. In addition to that, an electronic override system is something that we definitely want to follow through with. We have a great Chief Information Officer who's going to be working very closely with us in the IT department to really make sure that we follow through. Expansion of mental health resources on campus. This is just the tip of the iceberg, but in general, we want to really hit the ground running within the first 100 days and get a lot of this stuff done.
I would just add on to have students actually know what SJ does and like get the word out, because I feel like with those 100s, like have like the incoming freshmen know the resources that are available to them on campus, and like getting the word out, like having our office on campus so people can actually approach us and like tell us their stories, because the ideas that we have are only like coming from us and like the people that we know. So we definitely want to invite more students to come in and like bring forward the ideas that they have and the different issues that they want to tackle. So definitely being a resource on campus would be the first thing that we want to tackle.
Well, thank you both so much for joining us today. I'm sure I can speak for the entire student body when we're greatly anticipating seeing what you both are going to bring to these really important roles as liaisons between the student body and the administration. Congratulations again, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
The many issues affecting Marist are by no means isolated. The stories our reporters pursue often contribute to a greater national dialogue surrounding hot-button topics. We want to take this opportunity to delve deeper into the diverse stories we publish and facilitate a more open discussion with students. Here at the roundtable tonight, we have junior and editor-in-chief of the Marist Circle, Tara Germano, and sophomore John Rohr.
Last month, we spoke briefly on the issue of political apathy and activity on campus. We wanted to take the opportunity to explore that topic more fully. I had the opportunity to speak with both the president of the College Democrats and the president of the College Republicans. And though, of course, they have completely different political views, one thing that they really strongly agreed on was the fact that they have trouble engaging Marist students and find the student body particularly apathetic. Though looking back in the history of Marist, we can see that that wasn't always the case, particularly in the Vietnam War era. There were voices on both sides of the cause, pro-war and anti-war, a lot of conflict over that issue, and a lot of different topics from racism to local farming and like the AMP in Poughkeepsie have gotten students out voicing their opinions, boycotting, making petitions. So now we're just kind of wondering how this shift occurred at Marist, and do you agree that right now there's a lack of student interest in being politically engaged?
All right, well, I mean, for example, I was abroad while this happened, but Julia McCarthy had that great initiative where she had the voter drive, and she had the absentee ballot voter drive where she got, I forget the numbers
over
on it,
400.
Over 400,
yeah,
which is an incredible number for a small school. So I think that the thing with Marist is Marist kids need a push to be politically active. Somehow they need some sort of segue to make it be easy for them, which I think the whole country needs in general. I think that definitely reflects on how we have such a low voter turnout in this country. And just to begin with, I don't want to throw numbers out there, but I think we have 60% of registered voters vote normally in the presidential elections on average, which is a pretty low number for a huge country. And I think that the problem at Marist is that I think this is so multidimensional, it's hard to just answer it right away, but just looking at the levels of diversity we have here, especially economic diversity and racial diversity as well, and a lot of other levels of diversity, it's hard for people who do have privilege to have an incentive to want to make a political change if they're fine. Yeah. So I think the bottom line does lie there, but I think there's a lot of other dimensions to it that we can touch upon.
Yeah, to go off of that, I think diversity, when you look at politics, you're talking about voting and political activity, but you're also, I think, talking about movements and working for a specific cause and being passionate about wanting change. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there when you said diversity. I think diversity has a lot to do with a desire to participate in those movements or to want change. And even looking at the like from a microcosmic level at Marist, the diversity climate survey was just released, or it was just the campus climate survey, it was titled. The results were just released today, yesterday, something like that. But something I found interesting was the majority of participants or respondents said that they feel that Marist is a very, welcoming, healthy climate on campus. But then one of the improvement opportunities was that even though the majority of respondents felt that it was an inclusive campus, the minority groups, ranging from racial minorities to religious minorities to even women in certain cases, were less inclined to feel that the climate was healthy than their majority counterparts. So I think that speaks volumes when you have sort of a homogeneous population on a relative scale. Then there's that minority voice it's going to be sort of drowned out a little bit, and that I think probably reflects in why we have maybe less political activity than a more diverse school with kids from all different backgrounds and representing all different movements. So.
Definitely.
Well, I think we as a student body can do a better job of talking to one another. I think, especially nowadays, people are so concerned with upsetting one another with what they might say or being upset by something somebody else says. And people aren't really often open to listening to a differing opinion. So if we can just not get into shouting matches and just engage in civil conversation, I think we can push the conversation forward.
I was actually impressed with talking to both the club presidents, how they're starting to, and already have been working together in the past to try to create that dialogue between the two groups. They recently had a debate and they worked together to create the topics, and they said they've attended each other's meetings in the past, and they both said in separate interviews that they find the other group to be a great partner in trying to change the campus culture and just engage more students, because at the end of the day, they both have different political views, but they want people to vote. It comes down to that. And so I thought that was an interesting perspective as well. And to go off your point about people being afraid to talk, I sometimes do wonder if it has to do less with the Marist culture and just the national dialogue that makes people afraid to voice their own opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we're at a very, divisive time right now, and that's certainly reflecting on the Marist campus. But I do know, even reading the Marist Circle article that you wrote, that this has always, so there certainly was more political activity during more political times, like the Vietnam War, for example. However, a few of the scholars in there noted that Marist was always a little bit less politically active than the average school, and also a little bit more right of center than the average college. You think of colleges and universities as liberal colleges and universities. So I might be going out on a limb here, but I wonder too if, right of center is a little bit less inclined, being our age, to speak on these issues. I do think there's something to getting in screaming matches as well, but it's important that we all listen and learn from one another before we formulate our own opinions as well.
And Joe Parada, who's the president of the College Republicans, said that even within their own club, there's so much division on Trump. And people who are against him, people who are for him, and that even within their club, they're having these internal debates. And so that makes it even harder to, say, come up with a debate topic to, debate with the Democrats, because they don't all agree. They're not a united front on some issues. And, there's different levels of, intensity in each party. There's yellow dog Democrats and all that, and just lukewarm on either side. But I think it's really interesting to have such a contentious political climate that even an organization like the College Republicans is just so divided.
Yeah, I think that completely reflects on the climate we have in our country right now. I think that's just, it's such a parallel, and it's interesting to see a small, like Alyssa was saying, a small liberal arts college is expected to be more like Vassar on things like this. But we saw in the 2016 election, when most of us were here, I was a freshman actually, but we didn't have protests or anything, but so many college campuses did, and that's fine, and we don't have to, but it's not something you would expect. But I think that Marist has this picture, this reputation as this conservative, business-oriented, skill-oriented campus, where a professor said this to me once, that this is a generalization, that most Marist students are just kind of practicing to be 40. Most Marist students are looking for a stable life, and that's perfectly fine. And if that's, we have amazing pre-professional programs, and that's totally fine. And I don't think that's something that's always problematic, like people do make it out to be when it comes to activism. But it is really important. Sarah, you do mention this in your article that's going to come out, but in the 60s and 70s, Marist wasn't really like that. It was super active. We had a lot of political activism on campus and a lot of, like, people linked arms in Donnelly protesting the Vietnam War, like students surrounding, and you can never picture that now. And that's definitely something to take note of and just to think about the reasons why. And if you want to change that, like, try to take steps to change that. But if this is how you like it, then it just kind of says something about the demographics that we have here right now. But I think our campus is changing in a lot of ways, and I think we can see that with the new renovations to the steel plant. I think we're going to get a lot more art students who come in here, and a lot more diversity is being welcomed to a campus like ours. And I think that I think things are going to change soon, and we're going to kind of go back on that, like, swinging pendulum where we're going to reach this medium right now, because we were at this in the 90s. We were at this very conservative, business-oriented school, and we had this vision of a Catholic school founded by the Marist brothers, but the Marist brothers were more progressive. And I think that's a vision that people just don't really know the real facts behind. And I think it's important to educate our student population about how our campus was in its, like, founding days, in its earlier days, and how our narrative is changing and how it's going back and forth, and it's been going back and forth for decades.
Yeah, I think going off of that too, practicing to be like you're 40 is it's a good illustration, I guess, of the general culture. And I guess you could say that could go for a lot of schools as well, but it is super important to critically think about your current environment, because that's how you are going to improve and learn from people rather than being so tunnel visioned and focused. Being able to see different perspectives and just even having those perspectives represented. So not even tangible diversity we're talking about, but even diversity in terms of how people think, how they were raised, where they're from.
Even their majors.
Their majors, yeah. There's, like, such a loaded term, but if you bring all that together, I think you do have a lot of passion, and we shouldn't be scared to question one another. There is a lot of agreement on this campus, or at least, like, superficial agreement.
Yeah,
and if we just, I don't know, we're true to ourselves and our perspectives, and also opening to learning from people, it would definitely be maybe more the 60s, 70s feel that we used to have. But
yeah, I think maybe this is a good place to end, but I think when it comes down to it, like, we are college students, we are here to learn, and that doesn't just extend to the classroom. It's, you know, learning about your political views as well. And you know, people don't have to have it all figured out right now. You know, you could switch, like, your political views, you know, all throughout your life, but I think the most important thing to constructing that view on the world that you have politically is to take in all those different points of view. So if there's anything positive that came out of my talking with, you know, President Yellen, former President Murray, and just all these different people, is that they feel that generally Marist can be pretty welcoming to a variety of views. And so if we continue to see that happening, hopefully, you know, it'll help people, even if they're not active, let those thoughts percolate, and then they'll be informed and engaged voters in the next 5 years, maybe.
Yeah, discussion is huge. And going off of that, I haven't heard too much discussion. We did have a faculty write a piece for our last Marist Circle edition on this topic. It was an opinion piece, but on Operation Varsity Blues, so the college admissions scandal. It's sweeping through America right now. It's actually quite sad. So I guess, how do you guys feel about what these implications are? You know, it's this huge, massive story that the New York Times has. I was looking to as like an entire page for the college admission scandal, just because the, you know, trial is starting and all of the you know, implications are starting to, we're going to see what the consequences of this really are. So that said, what do you guys think? How do you see, like, what are your thoughts on this college admissions scandal? And do you see it affecting higher education as a whole, or do you think it's being, I guess, blown out of proportion, or how do you guys see this issue?
It's kind of like affirmative action for the rich and the famous. Gone are the days of donating enough money to build a library and wink, wink, your kid might get in. It's, you know, nowadays we have parents photoshopping their kids as rowers and getting athletic scholarships and bribing coaches and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think that it just kind of reflects on I think this is an example of justice to a huge demographic of things that have not, it's really no secret that this stuff has been going on. I think that most Americans have kind of been so comfortable with it for so long, and this was the first time where legal action was able to be taken against it and for it to be like legitimate. But I think this is something that just speaks volumes about how comfortable our country is with letting people get away with things like this. And if this is a point where things like this will end, I'm so happy with the fact that it's being talked about. But I think that it's not surprising to a lot of people. It's not surprising to me at all. When I heard about it, when I heard it was Lori Loughlin, I was like, okay, this is just going to be an e-news piece and big deal.
Aunt Becky.
Yeah. And I don't know. I just think that hopefully this gets the political conversation that it needs and that it should have about corruption and multidimensional problems with privilege being taken advantage of. I think that it needs that conversation, and I think it's going more towards the scandal, which is, it's bound to happen, but I want to see this trial go with the more substantial route more than in just talk about how buzzworthy it is that this Instagram famous daughter who made YouTube videos was doing this. I hope it gets to the audience it needs to go to.
Yeah.
And I think it's only going to get crazier, especially since, speaking of Lori Loughlin, she didn't take the plea. She's saying no. And so that's just going to, it could have just quieted down, pretty quickly. But now, she could get real jail time from this. So this is going to be a story that we're going to be following for like months and months. And so I think with somebody as high profile as her, who's now not just, accepting, like sweeping it under the rug, I hope that it will blow into a larger conversation and more people become implicated in it if they are also, guilty of the same crimes.
Yeah, I think going off of Tara's point, it does need to transcend the word scandal, I think, because my first reaction upon reading that was that, well, this happens all the time. I literally remember thinking that, and it's because it does happen all the time. It might happen legally all the time. The legality of it there might be a hard line between what you can and can't do in order for, to essentially buy your way into college. But you can buy a building, you can make a donation. Legacy is so important when it comes to the college application. Just all these sort of backdoor ways that are, yes, legal, but at the same time, at the end of the day, it's money influencing college admittance, which is perpetuating the cycle of, education is supposed to be a liberating concept, I guess. It's supposed to sort of, solve inequity in our country, and it's sad to see the extent to which wealth can just stop that and keep education concentrated for those who are already wealthy. And I think that this I'm trying not to use the word scandal, but this issue is important to talk about so that, it becomes something tangible we can latch on to rather than just being like, yeah, this happens and there's nothing we can do about it.
And just make it okay again for a person like this to do something like this. I don't know. I also think that when you look at this situation, it kind of speaks to the point where not everyone has to go to college, and you can still be successful, and you can do whatever you want to do in life if you want to, and you don't always need a college degree to do that. And just this notion of getting the college experience and putting all this money into something just like you don't really need it unless you are going for a specific career that does need it. But people who don't have that innate, like, I want to go to college because I want to do this, why are you going? You can take up a trade and probably make so much more money. And I feel like we have this bubble in our country right now. Well, we do have this expectation for almost everyone to go to college. And you can't do anything without having a college degree anymore. But that notion is just something that was built off of, it was just built off of this ladder, this social contract that's really not legitimate, in my opinion. And this is something I think about a lot. Just like, I come from a family from trades, not as much college education, like half and half. I probably shouldn't be saying that, but if we can cut that, I'd love to. But I think that there's a lot of ways to just live your life without having to go to college and pay your way into it.
Yeah.
if you don't really want it. If you don't really want it.
Because Lori Laughlin's daughter literally
Yeah.
said in a YouTube video, like, I'm not really about school. I don't
Yeah.
really want to go.
Exactly.
She wanted to go to the tailgates.
Right. It
though.
clearly wasn't a money problem. So I think it was part, just like the experience that she wanted, and also just the prestige, of like,
Yeah.
and that goes off of your point of she just maybe felt like she needed to go to college just so she could say that she did it.
It's like a rite of passage now, and
which
it
is
never
probably
was
a
that.
common feeling,
Yeah.
And making sure your kids know that if they work hard, they'll get what they want. And Lori Laughlin and others essentially bought that idea for them.
It's so true.
I don't know. Going off of that, do you think that it's important to have this discussion at Marist, or I don't know? Do you think it should be more talked about here, just because we are a college,
Yeah.
Well, obviously, we don't know if it's going on here.
Right.
No,
we
not
can't really-
yeah.
yep.
You're right.
Yep.
But just as a
Yeah, yeah.
student body and faculty, just having class discussions about it.
It came up in a lot of my classes,
think it's so
I will
important.
say.
Yeah.
And because I think it angers educators too,
course.
because they probably taught students before who they can tell right away, like,
Of
don't want to
course.
be there in the classroom. They're only there because their parents need them, or they're just there to, get the degree to say that they did it, not to actually like work hard. So
course.
I'm sure they, just as much as any of us, want this all to just come up and just have this be like the first of many people who've done this to fall. So
Yeah, definitely. I think it's important to just evaluate the student body that we do have and to just like make sure that we have an environment where people want to be here and people are all here for the same reasons and learning, which is, it's realistically not going to happen anywhere. Like, you're never going to get a population where every single kid wants to be there to learn, because everyone's there with a different background, a different reason. And that's just the basis of privilege. If we're not all at the same starting point, it's impossible to be at the same ending point.
Right.
And I think that's just a notion that needs to be more normalized. It's very hard for people to accept that. And I think that this is just a telltale situation where we should really take a time to evaluate what happened and what probably is happening all over the country, and just take time to realize that it might not be right. It's just really not.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Well, I think that about wraps up our roundtable discussion. But thank you both for coming on.
Thank you, guys.
We had some very fruitful conversations, I think. So,
Yeah, thanks.
and that will close out the night.